I didn't confront my mother because I was angry. I confronted her because the lies stopped adding up. Every memory I had, every rule she enforced, every name that was never mentioned, they all pointed to something she buried deep. When I finally asked the question she spent decades avoiding, she didn't deny it. She went quiet. And in that silence, my entire childhood collapsed. My mother was known as a strong woman. That's what people said about her. Strong, disciplined, protective. The kind of parent who never explained herself, only expected obedience. Growing up, our house ran on rules that didn't come with reasons. Don't ask about your father. Don't talk to strangers. Don't bring friends home without warning. Don't trust anyone too easily, especially men. At the time, I thought she was just cautious, overprotective, maybe traumatized by something she didn't want to relive. But as I got older, the rules didn't relax. They tightened. By the time I was a teenager, I realized my mother wasn't just protecting me. She was controlling the narrative. It was a school assignment. Family history. Everyone else brought photos, stories, timelines. I brought nothing. When I asked her about my father, just basic details, she snapped. "He's not part of our story," she said sharply. That was the end of the conversation. Or so she thought. Because that reaction told me more than any answer could. No wedding pictures, no relatives from her side who spoke openly. Everything before my 5th birthday existed in fragments. Half answers, redirected questions, and sudden anger. And anger is rarely about the question. It's about the fear of the answer. As an adult, I noticed how she reacted to certain things. News stories about scandals, mentions of criminal cases, discussions about identity, past mistakes, second chances. She'd change the channel. Leave the room. Get defensive. It wasn't discomfort. It was recognition. The moment that pushed me over the edge came from a stranger. A man stopped me outside a grocery store. He looked confused, then unsettled, then pale. "You look exactly like her," he said. "Like who?" I asked. He hesitated. "Your mother. Before everything happened." My chest tightened. "What happened?" I asked. He walked away, because suddenly every unexplained rule made sense. Every missing detail felt intentional. Every memory felt edited. And I understood something terrifying. My childhood wasn't just protected. It was manufactured. The next morning, I sat across from her at the kitchen table. No anger, no accusations, just one sentence. "Who were you before you became my mom?" She froze, didn't answer, didn't deflect. She stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. And then she said something that made my stomach drop. "You were never supposed to find out." She didn't look at me when she started talking. That was the first sign this wasn't going to be a small confession. "I wasn't always who you think I was," she said quietly. I stayed silent. Adam pacing isn't about rushing. It's about letting the weight build. She told me her real name wasn't the one I grew up using. She'd changed it legally years before I was born. New name, new city, new life. "Why?" I asked. She swallowed. "Because some names don't get second chances." My chest tightened. Before she was my mother, she wasn't cautious. She was reckless. She ran with people who lived fast and disappeared faster. People who didn't use last names. People who believed rules were optional. She wasn't dragged into it. She chose it. And the worst part? She was good at it. When I finally asked about him, her voice broke for the first time. "He wasn't your father," she said. I felt the air leave my lungs. "He was part of the life I was running from?" I stared at her. Then who is my father? She hesitated, long enough to confirm my fear. He doesn't know you exist. Every rule I grew up with suddenly made sense. The isolation, the paranoia, the constant moving. She wasn't just afraid of the world, she was hiding from it. I thought if I raised you right, she whispered, I could erase who I was. What did you do? I asked. She finally looked at me and said the sentence that rewrote my childhood. I testified against people who don't forgive. I felt sick. Witness protection, new identity, total silence. My childhood wasn't quiet because she was strict. It was quiet because someone was always listening. Every friend I wasn't allowed to keep. Every school we left suddenly. Every door she triple-checked at night. None of it was about me. It was about survival, and she never gave me a choice. I leaned forward. Did you ever think about telling me? She shook her head. No, she said. Because once you know, you're involved. That's when it hit me. She didn't protect my childhood. She sacrificed it to protect her past. There are moments in life when a memory rearranges itself, not because it changed, but because now you finally understand it. As my mother kept talking, old moments from my childhood began lining up like evidence. And suddenly they weren't harmless anymore. They were warnings. I was 9 years old the first time I remember her panic. Not anger, not control, pure fear. I had wandered 2 blocks from our house to buy candy. Nothing unusual, nothing reckless. But when I came back, she was standing in the street, barefoot, shaking, screaming my name. When she saw me, she didn't hug me. She slapped me, hard. Then she dragged me inside and locked every door. I remember crying, confused, humiliated. That night, she slept on the floor outside my room with a knife. At the time, I thought she was unstable. Now I knew better. Every time I started to make friends, we moved. New city, new school, new rules. She always said it was for better opportunities. That was a lie. She moved when someone got too curious, when a neighbor asked the wrong question, when a teacher noticed inconsistencies in paperwork. Stability was dangerous. She told me about a man who came looking for her once. I remembered him immediately. I was 12. He'd approached me outside a library, asked me my name, told me I looked like someone he used to know. I'd laughed and told him my mom's name. When I got home, my mother went pale. We moved 3 days later. I thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. Her voice shook when she admitted this part. The people I testified against, she said, weren't all convicted. Some disappeared, some took deals, some walked free, and some were patient. They didn't need to find me, she said. They just needed to find you. My stomach dropped. She didn't just limit my freedom, she monitored it. She read my messages, listened to my calls, tracked who I talked to. Not because she didn't trust me, because she didn't trust them. Every boundary she enforced was a shield, one I never agreed to carry. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't just my mother. She was a survivor who dragged a child through her escape. And survival had a cost. Did you ever think about what this did to me? I asked quietly. She nodded. Every day, she said. And I'd still do it again. That hurt more than the truth. Because in that moment I understood something brutal. My childhood wasn't ruined by her past. It was ruined by her certainty that I didn't deserve the truth. There's a difference between understanding why something happened and accepting what it did to you. My mother had survived something real, dangerous, life-ending. But survival doesn't erase consequences. It just delays them. I asked her the one thing she didn't want to answer. Did you ever think I might resent you? She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was steady but tired. I knew you would, she said. I just hoped you'd live long enough to do it. That sentence hit harder than any confession before it, because it meant she'd planned for my pain, accepted it, budgeted it into her choices. I told her things I'd never said out loud, that I struggled with trust, that I never felt rooted anywhere, that every relationship felt temporary because everything in my life had been. I told her how I learned to read rooms too early, how I avoided attention instinctively, how I learned to disappear before anyone could notice me. Those weren't survival skills. They were adaptations, and they followed me into adulthood. She tried to explain again, about danger, about threats, about why silence was safer than truth. I stopped her. You didn't protect me from fear, I said. You raised me inside it. That was the moment her certainty cracked. Not dramatically. Just enough to let doubt in. She admitted something else then, something she'd never told anyone. There had been signs recently. A name she recognized in a news article, a man released early, a pattern that felt familiar. She'd assumed it was paranoia. Now she wasn't sure. I think someone might be looking again, she said. The room went cold. Because suddenly this wasn't just history. It was active. You brought me into this, I said. Without consent, without truth, without choice. She nodded slowly. I know, she said. And if I had it to do again, I don't know what I'd change. That was the answer that broke me. Not guilt, not regret, certainty. She wasn't just hiding from her past. She was hiding me from it, using my ignorance as insulation. And the cost of that insulation was my childhood, my identity, my sense of safety. I stood up. I need space, I said. Not from the danger, from the lies. She didn't argue. She just nodded. Because for the first time, she understood something she never allowed herself to consider. The truth doesn't just threaten survival. Sometimes it threatens control. It didn't arrive dramatically. No masked men, no threats, no warning. Just an envelope, no return address, no handwriting I recognized. Only my name, spelled correctly, which already narrowed the list of people who could have sent it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 3 words. We remember her. I didn't show my mother at first. I sat on my bed holding the paper, realizing something that made my hands shake. Not with panic, but clarity. For the first time in my life, the danger wasn't theoretical. It was addressed to me. That's when it hit me. My ignorance hadn't protected me. It had delayed my involvement until I was completely unprepared. When I finally showed her the note, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She closed her eyes and whispered, "It started again. Not this. Not maybe. Again." That word told me everything. She told me the last pieces she'd held back, about a man she helped put away who'd sworn revenge, not loudly, but patiently. About how witness protection doesn't erase memory. It only changes addresses. About how she'd always known this day might come. She just hoped she wouldn't be alive to see it. You need to leave, she said. Go somewhere far. Don't tell me where. I laughed. Once. Bitter. You spent my entire childhood deciding for me, I said. You don't get to do that again. She looked at me then, not as a mother, but as someone facing consequences she could no longer manage alone. I contacted the program, not as a child in the dark, as an adult with questions, They confirmed what she never told me. My name had always been flagged, not actively, but conditionally, which meant once the past surfaced again, I was never going to be invisible. I told my mother something she'd never heard from me before. "I won't disappear for you," I said, "but I won't expose you either." She nodded slowly. That was the compromise. No more lies. No more silence disguised as protection, because this time survival didn't mean running. It meant ownership of the truth, of the damage, of the life that was built on omission. And for the first time, the past wasn't controlling us. We were facing it, together but honestly. The knock never came. That's the part people don't expect. No shadow at the window, no stranger at the door, no dramatic chase scene to justify the fear that shaped my life. What arrived instead was quieter. Paperwork, a phone call, a confirmation that the danger, real as it once was, had aged out of urgency. The past didn't disappear. It lost its authority. My mother sat across from me, smaller somehow, not weaker, just human. "I don't know how to be your mother without secrets," she said. That confession mattered more than before it. When truth arrives late, it doesn't fix the past. It renegotiates the future. I didn't forgive her that day. Not fully. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process that requires safety. But I stopped carrying her silence, stopped translating her fear into my identity. I realized something important. My childhood wasn't stolen by villains. It was edited by love that didn't trust me with reality. And that kind of love, however well-intended, still leaves scars. I chose distance. Not exile, boundaries. We talk now. Carefully, honestly, without mythology. I don't owe her secrecy anymore. And she doesn't get to decide what I remember. I've started rebuilding the parts of myself that never got permission to exist. Roots, trust, a future that doesn't require disappearing. My mother admitted her hidden past. Her confession didn't just ruin my childhood. It explained it. And explanation is the first step toward choice. I can't change how I was raised, but I can decide what I carry forward. This time, the truth isn't a threat. It's mine.